This question came from a viewer. How do you balance empathy in the workplace and not come across as a pushover or have people take advantage of you? Wake up, leaders. This is Glen Guyton, your cultural futurist and keynote speaker, helping you to unlock the power of your people. It is time for our executive coffee break. I have my beverage in hand. I hope you have yours too. They say you can't choose your family, but you can choose your workplace culture and your beverage. I'm drinking coffee this morning, reheated coffee, because I'm trying to, saving coffee. Don't just pour it down the drain. Reheat it, reuse it. My goal is to equip you with effective strategies to foster a culture of innovation, reduce workplace stress, and elevate team performance. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe because that's so important. Let's get into it. So, I did have a thought-provoking question from one of my videos that I've shared with you. The question of not being a jerk, right? I was a jerk. I had a video about being a jerk and how I overcame that. And so my question for you today is, have you ever felt like your empathy is being mistaken for weakness? And what do you do about that? Or have you wondered, if you lead with your heart, will you lose your edge? Now, that's a tricky question. And I think that as we think about questions like that, we really have to question what type of leader we are. And the answer to this may differ based on, how you identify. If you're a male leader or a female leader, I think sometimes we approach leadership differently as far as how we deal with the emotional piece of it. And let me be careful because I'm a man. And so I may not have the depth of knowledge of this, but I want us to start thinking about these things. Because we set up our workplaces with certain expectations, and we're still in a pretty male-dominated way of leading. So this empathy thing is challenging, I think, especially to some male leaders, and then maybe for those that have been formed in the typical way that we lead in most corporations. So it's not necessarily just a gender thing or how we identify. But I do think that the way we built many institutions and what we think is good leadership is sometimes formed in how we lead as males and how males are expected to lead. So just wanted to caveat that a little bit. But let's just talk about empathetic leadership in general, because we have to have a balance between understanding and authority when it comes to the workplace. And it can be a real fine line as we want to create these inclusive environments. And if we look at certain industries are dominated by emotional abuse. There are many industries out there. And if you're watching the news, you see what's going on in the entertainment industry with P. Diddy. I know that's a really weird kind of industry, the music industry, but it's dominated by people with authority abusing subordinates in order for them to be elevated. So this is a challenge for all of us as leaders. We need to be mindful of the toxic traits that are happening in the workplace. And again, I told my story about being a jerk, and this was in a military environment, very, very rigid, orders, very hierarchical, and that can lead to forms of abuse. So how do we balance these things out? To let people know that we care, but to also say, hey, we're not going to be a pushover, because the reverse could happen, right? People can take advantage of our niceties. So what is empathetic leadership? That's probably where we should start, to help you define what being empathetic as a leader means. It doesn't mean being a pushover. It doesn't mean that anything goes. It's not the wild, wild west. But I think part of it starts with listening. And we have to listen without compromising the standards and the values of the institution. I've worked with leaders, and at the time I was working with millennials. I know millennials, you all are older now, but this is when you all first came out into the workplace. I was working with millennials, and they had a lot of questions. Well, what about this? What about this? Glenn, why are we doing this? Why do we make this decision? I don't agree with this decision. And I would listen. And sometimes their decisions would make me change the course of action that I initially was going to take. And sometimes I would say, hey, no, this is what's happening based on my experience, based on my authority. This is what we need to do. Thank you for sharing your perspective, but at this time, you don't have enough information, you don't have enough background, you don't have enough details to really be making an informed decision. But there were other times when they helped me to see things from a different perspective. And I think that my younger staff members understood that I would listen to their ideas and give them a fair shake. So I think that's part of the beginning of empathy, to let people know that their input is valued, and that it does have the ability to change the course of the decisions in the organization. The next part of it is setting clear boundaries and expectations when we start thinking about empathetic leadership. Now, you can build in some empathetic things into your employee manual. If there are deaths in family, if people are dealing with child and family issues, you can have some flex time built into your policy so that allows you to show some empathy. And so say you give people 5 days of flex time. Now they can use it in any way that they see fit. You can outline some parameters, but once you go beyond that to say, hey, we've exhausted our policy. I would hate to say that we've exhausted our empathy, because things always happen. You always have to give yourself some wiggle room, but set yourself up a framework so that you know kind of where you're going. You set some boundaries, not only for the employee, but also for yourself as a leader. You can say, okay, these are some things where I have some flexibility. That's one of the things that I've always tried to do as a leader, is to give myself some flexibility. Give yourself options to be empathetic, but also give yourself some guardrails so that, things can't go too far out of whack. And so part of this means too, consistent enforcement of rules and policies, but give yourself some flexibility. I can't say that enough. As a leader, flexibility will lead to you having some more empathy or shows of empathy, but also gives you a framework to work within. The next thing you can do if you want to be an empathetic leader but not be a pushover, building trust and confidence in your team. Make sure you're delegating responsibility so that people are growing, people understand what the mission is. You provide leadership, provide support to people. And so when you start walking alongside of people, getting to know people, people begin to trust you. And I do think that trust helps to facilitate maybe the perception of empathy. I'm not saying be fake, but what I am saying is that people, once they sense you understand them, then they'll work with you, right? They'll work with you. They'll respect your authority, and also know that you're a kind and compassionate person. Encourage autonomy within these defined parameters. So give people some flexibility so they don't have to push against you. So these are some important things, I think, as we think about the limits of empathy. Make sure people are part of the solution. Don't just let people come to you with problems as a leader. Well, they're not letting me do this. Well, what's your solution? How can the organization help you? You come up with a solution, and let's work through it together. Part of us being a pushover, or having a perception of that we're being pushed over, is that we're coming up with all the answers, we're taking all the risk, and we're the only ones invested in the process. Even though it's this other person's drama or life situation or emotional struggle that they're going through, we feel like as leaders sometimes that we have to take all of that upon ourselves. Some leaders do, that they put all that on their shoulders, and they have to come up with the solutions. They have to Superman, Superwoman, Superperson the solution. Don't do that. This needs to be a mutual thing. You have to work together through some of these things. You're not being... empathy is one word. Sympathy is another word, where you're just feeling sorry for the person. It's not this. That's not the response we're looking for. We want to work through the emotions with the person, help the other person find the solution. And I think that's the best way. Otherwise, if you're just trying to fix everything, you're superheroing everything, then eventually people are going to look to you to do that. And then when you don't come and rescue them, it's going to be a problem. So your job in an empathetic leadership role is not to be the hero, is not to be the rescuer, but it's to help facilitate solutions that work well for you and also work well for the person. And of course, the mission of the organization. So just some keys to this is use empathy to inform decisions, not dictate them. Handle difficult conversations by, first listening to people, figuring out what's going on. So take your time, take a deep breath. We don't have to do these things quickly. People just need to know that we're there and that we care. Lead by example, and that's really one of the keys to balancing compassion and authority. Make sure people are really clear about what the limits are. Some things that you can do to keep these things from getting out of hand, just a few practical tips are just have regular check-ins with team members so that you know what's going on with them so that you can avoid problems before they happen. Sometimes being proactive is really a good thing. So you know that an employee, a staff member is about to fall off the cliff. The really good empathetic thing to do is catch them before they fall off the cliff. Say, hey, I understand. I noticed that you're having some challenges. Won't you take off half a day? Won't you take off a half hour to go fix this? Have you tried to tap into our EAP programs? We have counseling available. We have financial services available for you. So if you're regularly checking in as an empathetic leader, you can handle these problems before things get to the bad, toxic crisis point, because you know what's going on with your employees. You can see that performance is dipping. You can see that they're having a bad day. You know the signs, you read the signs. To me, that's really good. That's the really good part of empathy. Knowing who your people are, your people trust you, and you're able to kind of foresee what's going to happen with them before it gets to the crisis place. Make sure you have clear communication channels. I could probably tell a story. I'll change the names to protect the innocent, but I know a young person that was working at a restaurant, and they were having some challenges with people showing up for work on time, right? And so one of the people that worked at the organization said, hey, I can't stay long. My shift's been compromised a couple of times. I can't stay long. Where's the next person? Person didn't show up. The employee left. Send a message in their group text program. Employee left. Nobody showed up for work, and that employee got fired. Should they have gotten fired? Probably not, because it really wasn't their fault. They were already working an extended period of time. But if the workplace had trust, if it had a better communication system, that never would have happened, because people would have felt comfortable talking to the supervisor, talking to the boss. Hey, this is what's going on. Hey, can you help me out here? What are we going to do? But in an unhealthy workplace where people don't communicate, or you're dependent on one small channel of communication, people aren't going to respond. People aren't going to feel comfortable talking to you, and people are going to take matters in their own hand, and it'll lead to unfortunate outcomes. The business was closed for a period of time. The employee got fired, and so just bad outcomes all around. And so we need to make sure that we have clear communication channels. People feel comfortable sharing and talking in the workplace, and you can avoid problems before they happen. All right, thank you for joining me today, but let's not forget, better leaders get better results. So to every one of you leading the charge for a more supportive and engaging workplace, I leave you with this. Stay bold, stay inspired, and remember that your actions today shape the culture of tomorrow. My name is Glen Guyton. You all have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.